Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we're focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to Drive On. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and today my guest is Rich Ingram. Rich is a motivational speaker, an endurance athlete, and a combat wounded Army veteran. He's known for his keynote speech, Raw Resilience, and Rich shares his journey from surviving a roadside bomb attack to becoming the first combat wounded amputee to commission as an Army officer. And today we'll discuss his incredible story, the concept of raw resilience that he talks about, and how veterans can apply these lessons in their own lives. So before we get into all that, Rich, really, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. I briefly mentioned in the intro the roadside bomb attack that you survived. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what happened that day? This was back in 2005, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So it was in 2005 was my first deployment. We were about 3 months into deployment. So we were in just southwest of Baghdad. So a lot of folks might remember it as a triangle of death back then. So Lutafia, Yusufia, and Mahmudia. So we were somewhere around Yusufia, and at that time we didn't have MRAPs. We just regular Humvees, and I think we had just started getting the up armor Humvees. And so I was a rear gunner on the 50 on this patrol. So I was in a scout platoon, and so we're 4-vehicle Humvee patrol. And man, I'll just tell you, I found every bit of my purpose in the military. I volunteered for every mission that I could, and just trying to fill shoes of the guys that have gone before us. And so that's why it was so devastating. And instead of getting the fight that I envisioned, we struck an ID, and so being the rear gunner, like I didn't see the blast, I didn't see anything. I just remember getting catapulted in the air, and then we were thrown into a roll. But during that time, you're taught as the gunner, you drop down and grab the radio mount in a rollover, and so that's what I tried to do, and maybe I did it well, but I just remember saying to myself over and over again, lights out, say a prayer, because I knew I was going to die. I mean, we had back at Fort Stewart before we deployed, a gunner died in a rollover. I mean, and that was in training, but somehow I got thrown out of the turret. And I remember hitting the ground, like it was like kind of a meta moment. Like, is this real? But when I looked up, I saw my driver was now unconscious in the passenger seat of the Humvee. And so when I went to move towards him, that's when I felt what I thought was a break in my arm. And so, because when you have that kind of traumatic injury, it takes a while for your nerves to catch up. And so when I went to feel for the break, my hand just hit nothing. Yeah. And so when I look down, I see my arm mangled, lying on the ground, connected by a piece of tissue no bigger than your pinky finger. And so now I'm back in this I'm gonna die again mode. And so I picked my arm up and ran with it. And so I just cradled it and ran and started, kicking the Humvee door, tourniquet. And this driver, I mean, he had just caught up with us, I think, like 2 weeks prior. He's 18 years old, like right out of basic training. And I mean, he executed flawlessly. I mean, once he came to, he put the tourniquet, he, reached in my pocket, put a tourniquet on, and everybody, set up a security perimeter. Unfortunately, we weren't in a firefight or anything like that. I think we've taken some small arms fire, but that's it. And we just waited for the medevac to arrive, and so that was kind of how everything went down. And my squad leader as well, so he was TC truck commander. all of a sudden, when I'm leaned up against the Humvee, we hear him saying, "Would someone please get this Humvee off me?" Well, he got ejected as well. I guess during the blast at some point, the vehicle landed on
Ooh,
him. And yeah, but it was supporting his helmet was supporting his body, like the weight of the Humvee. So I mean, somehow that Kevlar helmet had gotten, turned around, and the leaf springs of the Humvee, I guess, were sitting on it. And I mean, his head would have gotten smashed, but he suffered some injuries as well, obviously broken back and some other stuff. But yeah, so fortunately no one was killed during that attack. But yeah, that was it, man. To change my life.
man, have just given me like a greater respect for all of the the heavy equipment that we had to wear. That a lot of times I'd be out there in the heat cursing it because it's like this is so damn heavy and hot, and But I mean that helmet saved his life, right? That if it wasn't for that helmet, that unfortunately would have had a tragic ending. Not to say that it wasn't tragic in its own way, but and even more so with the loss of life. Um,
Yeah.
but I can only just imagine. I mean, I haven't had an experience like the one that you had where, probably adrenaline pumping, the nerves, like you said, the nerves didn't catch up, right away. And then you see your arm laying there on the ground, and kind of pick it up and run with it. Like, what's going through your head at that point? I mean, it can't be anything good. Obviously, you said like, well, this is going to be it. But I mean,
You
was
know,
it like I
no, it was
don't
I'm
what had to
not
be going through there?
fucking dying here.
Okay,
That's what's going through my head.
excellent.
Because during the when the vehicle after the vehicle sustained, the initial blast, I can't control that, right? I mean, there's
Sure.
only so much that I can do, but I know that the tourniquet's going to stop the bleeding, and I can do something about that. And so, but yeah, that was the first thing. Is like I'm not fucking dying in this country, like that's that's not in the cards for me. And so, from there, I knew. I mean, I knew my arm was gone. Right. One
Yeah.
of my best friends came over, held my hand. They were getting upset at me because I was closing my eyes, and it's like, dude, it's July. It's 120 degrees. There's no shade, and at this point I'm laying down. So, you know, Paul held my hand the whole way to the chopper. And I remember when we were running the chopper, he's like, as much as you can whisper with prop wash and everything, but he's like, guys, watch his arm is falling off the stretcher. And I'm like, dude, I can hear you, like, I mean, cause it literally was attached by something like this. But I'll never forget once I got put on that helicopter, Paul let go of my hand and he said, "You're going to be all right, man. I'll see you soon." And he was killed a month later.
Oh,
Yeah. And I'll never forget when I got that phone call because he and I were really close. And that was when I first learned, like, are you sitting down? I mean, I all fell out.
mhm.
Um, but everybody did their job, and that was what saved my life. I mean, everybody had a place to be, a job to do, and they did it because we had
Y
trained to execute during those kind of times.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things that, you hear from people in these kind of situations where it's like it's almost like a reflex because you've trained on it so much, muscle memory maybe, whatever you wanna call it, where you just do your job and, like that young kid who was just out of basic training who put the tourniquet on your arm, like, that's something he probably only learned how to do just a few months prior, like,
Right? Yeah.
nobody knows, like, nobody does tourniquets, like, just for fun, like, before you need to know how to do that, you're in that type of position, whether it's a paramedic or military, whatever, like, most people don't know how to do that, um, and so likely he just learned how to do that just a little while ago, and here he is now. Holy crap! Now I got to put this thing on somebody. Um, that's phew, man. Thank God for the training, right? So
Yeah.
you had this. not here, kind of attitude. I'm not going out here, not in this country, not now, not this way kind of thing, right? And I gotta imagine that kind of led to this concept of raw resilience that you talk about, right? Like, how does it kind of apply, and how do you use that kind of concept to overcome challenges like this and other challenges in folks' lives?
Yeah, so um, raw resilience. I mean, it took me a while to kind of figure out when I was looking back. Okay, I've had a couple different defining moments in my life where I've had to reinvent myself, so to speak. Because even whether you've had a traumatic injury or you're just ETSing, like
Mhm.
ETS is tough, man. Right?
Yeah.
Because especially your 20 years or a lifer or whatever, or either short term service, you've done 2-3 deployments, coming out of fifth gear like that and going into the civilian world, it is transformational, and most of us suffer.
Yeah.
Especially guys that are coming out of direct action units. It's just different. And so for me, like I'm going through a slump right now, and the reason is because I failed this weekend. I had a race, and it's the first race that I a DNF, as we call it. So I got a do not finish, and that stings, man. Like, it
Mm.
hurts, like I failed. And so what this process has taught me is the first thing that I did. It was a night race, so I got some sleep first. But next thing was like, what could I have done differently, and what will I do differently for the next time? There is no, you know, it. I'm not saying it makes things easier, but it makes them a lot shorter, right? So the emotions that we feel a lot of times of, whether it's not feeling worthy or having issues, reconnecting, because that's one of the biggest things is, like, a lot of people we feel don't understand us, and we're not far off from that.
Mhm.
A lot of people can't understand us because they haven't been in our situations. And so, for us, that's a big deal. But raw resilience, the framework that I came up with, what it does is, and it's three things: is purpose, mindset, process. So purpose, mindset, process, in that order. And so we start by finding what our purpose is, and it's just asking why repeatedly. You feel like okay, this is your purpose. Okay, why? Because of this. Okay, why? And we keep going down. And I always say, if you're driving and you get hit by a Mack truck today, and you're in a hospital and a paraplegic or whatever, will your purpose still be the same? If it's will not be, then that's not your purpose. You need to go deeper with it, right?
Mm.
And so, for me, I looked at my soldiering being my purpose. I've looked at running being my purpose because I'm addicted to it for many reasons, which I'm sure we'll get to. But that's where I always start, is that purpose, and then following the process. So going into our mindset is exactly, like after this weekend, the first thing I did was like, how can I turn this negative into a positive outcome? And I'll tell you right now immediately what I did. So I dipped Copenhagen in like a banshee, and and I go in and I started reading all these medical studies on thermoregulation of your body and how nicotine affects that. And it's a vasoconstrictor, so your muscles. So as an endurance runner running in 97-degree heat, your blood, if your vessels are constricted, blood can't get to your muscles as well or as quickly, which means oxygen can't get to them as quickly. So you're literally starving your muscles for oxygen. And on top of that, your body, your skin flow. That's how your skin blood flow is diminished, or somehow minimalized from the nicotine, which is how you cool down your body. So
Mhm.
um I stopped dipping. And so I'm using that as like, this is the reason. And I'm only, what, 3-4 days in now. So I'm wanting to, pull my what little hair I have out. But that's the mindset. That's the mindset process. And then process is it's kind of around a challenge immersion. And so what it is aligning something with what you love doing with your purpose, and then immersing yourself in that challenge, and you're working on it every single day to pursue whatever it is. So for me, one of my biggest challenges is ultra running. So I have a 100 miler next month. So, that aligns with my purpose, which is to motivate and inspire. And so I do something every day towards that goal. What this does is it resiliently postures me to tackle adversity. Now, not just, any kind of adversity, but unforeseen adversity. So I'm going to react differently because I've gone through these 3 steps and continue to go through and practice these, whether you want to call them a battle drill or whatever. I'm now in a better position to, tackle those unforeseen events, because it's just another part of the process, another part of the journey is coming along. And so that's how I use it. I know it's kind of a long-winded answer to it, but it's true. I was going through some depression and still am right now just because of this race. I feel like a failure. Like I'm not supposed to be DNF in races at this point in my life, but you know what? It happens, and the only thing I can do is learn from it and tackle the next one.
Well, I think that's a great way to look at any sort of setback, and I don't want to use the word failure because that was kind of a setback. It was like you trained for this race, you had this goal in mind. Okay, I'm going to finish, and finish maybe in a certain amount of time, and you had all of these visions for what was going to happen, but didn't end up working out. You didn't finish, and okay, so now, like you said, earlier, when you got tossed from that Humvee, there's nothing you could do about that. I mean, when you're flying through the air, you're kinda out of your control at that point. It's like you're gonna land someplace, and where you
Right,
land is
right,
where you
right.
land.
Yeah.
That's not on you. But you can you can go back and do a after action report and figure out, okay, what can we do differently next time? How do we make this better? And, what were some of the negatives that took place during uh, this race? Let's just say, the race that you did. Why were these things? Going back, like, ask why. That's one of the things that we do in the work that I do. Outside of this podcast. We call it the 5 whys. You ask why 5 times, and it's not always 5, but sometimes on
Right,
average,
right.
it
You're
tends to
digging.
be 5.
Yeah.
By the time you get to that 5th why, you figured out what the root cause of
Right,
whatever
right.
that issue is, right? And so, like you kinda figured out, "Oh, okay, well, the nicotine was, it wasn't allow you to cool your body down, the oxygen wasn't getting to where it needed to go to. Okay, well, there's one problem. Let's get rid of that nicotine and see if that solves the problem."
Yeah. That was a low
And
hanging fruit. It's gone.
yeah, I mean, and well, it is and it isn't because, like you said, you're also wanting to pull your hair out as you're coming
It's
off of that,
you
right?
know,
But
it's easily identifiable as a
yes,
problem.
there it
So,
is. Yeah,
whether it's the issue, because I was vomiting uncontrollably,
sure.
violently, and it was pretty brutal. And so yeah, I mean, I'm with you. And one of the biggest things though is that not letting our emotions control the aftermath, because
Yeah,
that's often what ends up happening, because we don't have a way out of it. There's no we don't have a process for the next step. Okay, well, what's the next objective here? And so that's where I think, we're always going to feel those emotions. And I don't like labeling them as negative, because we need to use them. Our brain's telling us something, but at the same time, they lose their power or control over us
right.
if we are prepared, for that situation as much as we can be. And so yeah, you're right. It's not really not a failure at all. It's just it's a learning lesson.
Yep.
I mean, I sat out in the heat for 3 hours waiting for this race to start at 7 p.m. That was probably stupid. You know, a lot a lot of things, but that's the
Sure.
main thing, is like, hey, what's next? What's next? And we're gonna learn, and we're gonna implement those strategies for the next thing. Let's
And
go.
I think
Um,
when I hear this raw resilience in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, keep pushing forward and tackle the next thing and do it as best as you can. Learn from what happened this last time and just keep going because you could have not finished that race and you could have been like, you know what, screw it, I'm never going to run another race again. That I'm done because obviously I'm not good enough, and you could have had all this self doubt and all this negative talk in your head. But how helpful is that? It's not going to help you accomplish the goal of finishing a race or getting to the point where you are winning races. That might be one of the goals in life is to get to the point where you're winning these races. Um, but you won't get there if you just quit. So, all that negative talk that could be
Yeah.
going on, and I'm not saying it's not going on because you probably do have a little bit of that going on too, but you kinda have to tell those thoughts in your head to, like, just shut up for now. Like, "You're done. You're not helpful. I don't need to listen to you right now. What I need to do is just focus on how do I overcome this?" And this is more than just running, for the listeners. This is, like, any setback. If you lose a job or relationships or god, it could be anything that is a setback. In your case it was running, but it could be any number of things. um the other
Like, I
day.
mean, I get on stage and bomb. Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
y-
that
that
sucks.
could happen.
Um,
Yeah,
Trying something new and it doesn't drop like you think. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's
sure.
all, but it's all relative, right? And we can never plan for the exact thing, but the biggest thing is, like, you are hit in the gut with something. What are you gonna do?
Hmm.
And if you at least have some kind of plan in place where like, my framework isn't necessarily even a plan. It's just positioning you in a different way. So it doesn't matter. And that, and the raw part, where the raw part comes with, when we're finding our purpose, we gotta be true. We gotta be honest with ourselves, because we lie to ourselves all the time. And it's not necessarily our fault. It's just where we're at in society, right? Like, you know, we want to get this name brand stuff or whatever, whatever it is. And so it's like, you got to be true. Are you really that good? Come on, man. Like, be honest with you, or whatever.
Sure.
Like, however you're trying to define your purpose and goals and stuff like that. You got to be able to take an accurate inventory of where you are right now and what you have,
Hmm.
to be able to get to where you want to go. And so, I think that is just as important, is being true to yourself in the whole process. Because when you do have, like, I've had negative self-talk, but instead of me, like, keeping it at bay, what I try and do is I give it time. I'll give it attention, but I do it in a different way. I'm like, okay, is that true? Like, okay, we're saying that, being tough on myself. I mean, I people would think I'm crazy. I talk to myself all the time. It's like, okay, is that what am I really a dirtbag? What would give me, you know, uh, no, I mean, I was violently vomiting and could not run. I mean, that's just, could I have finished? I mean, probably. Was it worth it? No, this was a C race. So logically, I try and look at everything and break it down just from a logical perspective. And 9 times out of 10, the stuff that you're telling yourself, you realize, like, look, dude, if you just be positive with yourself, I mean, you're going to come out a lot better.
Right.
Cause, you know, hardly any of us are the shit bags that we tell ourselves that we are. And generally the people that are telling themselves that are not. The
Right.
people that don't tell themselves that are generally the ones that probably are. So, it's called accountability. And so,
Sure.
anyways,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
that's
and if you give a shit enough that you are hyping yourself up or talking to yourself, and you know what I mean? Like, if you're probably not a shitbag. You
yeah, you're giving yourself the time you deserve. I
right,
mean,
right.
put
And
in the
and in
work.
your case, like you said, could you have finished it? Yeah, maybe, but would it have been worth it? Like, you might have further, caused some injury to yourself. You might have had a, heat stroke, that kind of thing. That has all sorts of other complications that go on. And like, is it really worth it? So, at some point you got to know when to kind of throw in the towel, and
And
being realistic too. Sure, maybe I can run. I might be able to run a marathon. but I'm not gonna be in the Olympics. Like, let's just be real about it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not that good, and I never will be, and I'm okay with that. I don't want to put that time and effort into it to be that good, um, and I know what my limitations are. So, no, you'll never see me in the Olympics, and, unless I'm a spectator, waving on a camera or whatever, but I'm not gonna be the
Yeah.
guy running that everyone's watching, you know?
And it's ego too. I
Sure.
think is we think we're being hard by not quitting or whatever it is. But again, that goes back with being raw. Like and it doesn't matter what it is, whether you're stuck in this just deteriorating relationship, um, and you look at it, well, like where else would I go? Dude, if you're not happy, you gotta cut ties. I mean,
Mhm.
that's just, I'm not saying always jump without a parachute, but, when if we're living our lives unhappy, something has to change, and that's when, we gotta be true with who we really are and where we wanna be, and I think, recently, in the last year, my wife and I decided to separate, and that was it was not an easy decision, but it was just one of those things. They're like, hey, we identified like we are not happy. Why am I here? And it was a tough decision, but we were able to put in the steps to move forward, and that's it. And that's where the keep moving forward piece comes from, because it's just like you say with young kids. Like I grew up in a small town. There's nothing to do. Well, I forgot the adage, but it's like idle something,
Idle
um,
hands, something. Ah, shit, I forget it too.
but
Okay.
yeah, you
I
know
think
what
we
I'm
know what
talking
you
about.
someone will
It,
remind
it
us.
we have to stay in process, because that's when you can spiral. If
Yeah,
you're not moving, you're going to spiral, and so that's why that third step of the process is so important. That immersive challenge, identifying something that you can align your purpose with, and really that is has a positive effect or impact on your life, and but it has to be about you, and not about anyone else, but everything else. Not to say like it's just gonna fall in place. You have to work at everything. But if you're constantly feeling something towards your purpose, and it's gonna be uncomfortable, it's gonna cause discomfort, because you're working towards a goal. Um, but as long as it's fulfilling your purpose, that is one of the first steps in my mind towards happiness. Now, again, I'll say, or I guess first time I'm saying this, we've never arrived. Like no, nobody has ever, like, I mean, I'm talking about a setback that I just went through, separate. Like, I mean, it's never, Tony Robbins is not, like, he's never arrived. As soon as we think that we're never going to have these emotions again, guess what? I mean, we're going to get kicked off that horse pretty quick.
right, and I
So that's what we always have to stay in process.
yeah, and I think the key word there is the process, and so as opposed to having a goal in mind, like I want to achieve X, whatever that thing is. Um, just saying I want to get better at something and just continue trying to get better at whatever that thing is. I want to be a better runner in in your case. I want to get better at that, or I want to be a better father, or a mother, or whatever, whoever you are, whatever applies to your situation. It's just like every day I want to get just a little bit better at that. And that's like you said earlier, that's really all you have control over, and that's all you can focus on. You can't focus on all the other things that either don't bring you happiness, don't bring you closer to the goals that you have in your life. You have to really just work on those things that you can control that do bring you closer to your goal. And if you're doing things that take you away from that goal, like you're saying the Copenhagen was taking you away from the goal of being the type of runner that you want to be. Well, okay, well something's got to go. It's either the running or the dip. And you chose the dip,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it.
So um
And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's it.
yeah, and I think a lot of this is sort of common sense, right? But one of the things, and you identified this, we get in our own way and we're a pain in the ass to ourselves. And sometimes you just need to kick your ass and, and get in gear in order to figure out what it is that you need to do to move forward and stop getting in your own way.
Well,
And
that's
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just going to bring it back to your story here as far as some of the obstacles that you faced, with your recovery and then, transitioning into, civilian life. And well, actually, and you also, you stayed in the military even after your injuries, correct?
Yes
Or
and
was there a
no.
break?
There was a break, so
Okay.
I was retired. They retired me.
Okay.
Then I
And
said,
and
"Go."
and you said no. Nice. Um, but so you did become the first combat wounded amputee to commission as an officer. Um, that had to be a significant hurdle. I mean, there must have been some waivers that took place there, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, there were a lot of waivers. And you know what was so funny is when I got to Washington D.C., I arrived at Walter Reed like 2 days after I lost my arm, and and so anyways, while I'm there, a guy asked me to be on his triathlon team. So I had run a race in the Army TMR, and I didn't do too poorly. So this guy was like, "Hey, do you want to be my triathlon team?" And that decision really just catapulted my rehabilitative journey in a positive way. Can't I mean, because it as soon as I went back to school, went back to college, and I continued to do these triathlons, and then that's when I got back into ROTC at my college and everything, and so it really just changed my mindset on a lot of things as far as like, hey, I'm competing against other able-bodied individuals. Why can't I go back into the military, right?
Sure.
And so it changed everything for me. When you're talking about waivers, funny story. I get a call about 2 weeks before I'm supposed to commission. And this would have been in 2008, I guess. And this guy calls me. He's like, "Rich, dude, why didn't you tell me that you were doing this? I'm aide de camp to whomever had to sign the final waiver, and I can't remember if it was the Surgeon General or what." And that that guy was the same guy that asked me to be on his triathlon team.
Oh, no way.
How crazy is that? Yeah. And now look, there were a lot of other things. I did an internship with a state senator, and he got me up to DC in front of some guys that work for, I mean, all the way some people that work for President Bush's staff. Like, it was wild. And being at a senior military college in North Georgia, we had just some heavy hitters, right? We weren't a normal ROTC. We were one of 6 senior military colleges. So I had a lot of help, but there were times where it was like, "Hey, Rich, we don't think this is going to happen. If we'd like you to stay in the program, blah, blah, blah." And, I just stuck with it. I wasn't smart enough to do anything else. I kind of knew that, my entire adult life had been in the military. And so, yeah, I'd always wanted to be an officer. And so, I just kept following that dream. And I knew that they really didn't have much of an argument, because I was always very stern on if someone can meet a standard, who is anyone to tell them that they can't do something?
Sure.
That was always my stance on allowing women in the infantry. Everybody back when that conversation was going on, and I've been out for I don't know how many years now, so I don't know where we're at with it, but all these people, rednecks where I come from in Georgia. "Oh, what do you think about them?" But women, like, I mean, dude, if they can run and ruck and shoot a gun, like, why shouldn't they be in? And not the answer that they're expecting
Sure.
from me. And but nonetheless, I mean, I maxed my PT scores. I could shoot expert on a rifle. I mean, my toughest thing was changing my pants, right? So I just wouldn't change them. I was just the dirty guy. But I'm just kidding. But you know So there were some hurdles there, but I say we made it happen. I had just a great support staff there, and like I just kept moving. I just kept moving towards the target, and we made it happen.
And that's, to me, that's pretty inspiring because, you look at all the people who are in the military, like you said, there's physical requirements. You got to be able to, ruck. You got to shoot. You got to do all these things in the military. Um, you know, put your pants on, even. um, but
Sometimes.
sometimes, if you feel like it, but there's all these things that you have to be able to do, and they're hard things that you have to do, for someone who is completely able-bodied, no physical, issues going on with them. The Army issues those physical issues too. You'll have the bad back and the knees and the everything else. You'll get those
Yeah.
eventually, right? But for someone like yourself, um, part of your arm's missing, and that makes things a whole lot more difficult. But if you can still do it, I mean, I don't see a problem with it. If you still can do all the things that are expected of you, why not have someone? I mean, someone with the resilience and the attitude that you have, hell yeah, I'd want you. You know, like that's the exact kind of person that the army wants, the military wants, is someone with that can do attitude, and don't get in my way, because I'm gonna keep on going, and I'm not gonna stop. Um, but I know there's folks out there who are listening who probably are, in a similar position to what you were describing before, maybe struggling with that loss of identity after getting out of the military, finding purpose. Maybe there's injuries that, unexpected injury like yours, and it forces them to medically retire, and everything. You have any advice for them who maybe are struggling with that identity, or just finding that sense of purpose in their lives?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the first thing is, and it sounds so cliche, but find a support network. I have to say that I have been blessed with my family for that. I've had great family and friends in my support network. I know that well, I just moved to Austin, so I'm new to Austin, Texas. I'm new to this area, but in New Orleans, they had an amazing VFW. I'm
Mm,
talking. It wasn't just old World War II guys sitting around playing bingo and you know whatever. Not taking anything away from those guys, but we from the current era, it's hard to relate
sure.
sometimes. Especially if you don't play bingo or dance, and so anyways, I think that's paramount. I would like to be more available and have more conversations with veterans, honestly, just because I think that the biggest thing is you have to figure out your place in the world. You have to, and what that means is, like, I truly, when I look at my purpose, it is to motivate and inspire, and so and that will blossom even more. That'll change. I mean, it's not just a stamp that stays forever.
Mhm.
But the biggest thing with that is that I'm now postured differently, so it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I lose my voice and I can't speak, or if I lose, have a hurt knee and I can't run, I'm postured better to take on the next step or to figure out what my next challenge is, because I already know what that purpose is. So you have to figure that out first. You have to. And then from there, you got to start moving towards it. You have to start moving towards fulfilling it. So let's say it's this is who you maybe look at who you want to be. I have been in the fetal position on the couch before in a depressed state, because of this. And it
Mhm.
was when I shortly after I got out of the military, that was the only thing I knew. The second time I got out, it was the only thing I knew. I had, and I tried different things in the civilian world, and it's like, man, I don't want to do this. I built an insurance agency from scratch, sold it profitably, but during that time, I would rather cut off my right hand than sell insurance. That's not, who I am. And so, that's how I kind of figured out where I want to be right now. So I understand what it's like to feel lost and not connected, like completely. But you have to throw everything off your desk, pull out, a journal and just say, I'm going to figure out right now who I am, my place in the world, where I want to be. If you're not sure who you are, just try and figure out where do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And then you can get to, okay, what do you have that will take you there? And that challenge immersive process is very important. And again, mine is more set on running just because I'm passionate about it. And that is how, that's how I keep my sanity together and how I show up positively for people. But here's how that translates, that challenge immersive part translates. So I've been waiting on to putting a different talk together. And well, somebody contacted me that wants a talk that I've been thinking about putting together. Well, now they gave me a date. So I have a date and it is like, oh wow, all right, perfect, yes, I can do it, I can get it done. And it's the same thing as having a race. It has to be specific, and you have to have a plan to get there. And that's why it's difficult, is because you have to execute on that plan. It is challenging, it is uncomfortable to fit all of that in and to get it done. But guess what, you can be kind to yourself. You miss a day, you don't quite, like you have a setback, like I just said, it's okay, it's part of the process. And as soon as we realize that these painful situations are just part of the process, the less that we allow them to control us, and we can keep moving forward. And that I guess is the next step, is like, dude, identify who you are, but keep moving forward. Identify the things that are holding you back. You're in this, in a bad relationship or whatever it is, dude, you got to cut it. You have to cut it loose. And it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard, because maybe that's the only thing you've ever known. You've been with that person since you were
Sure.
18 or whatever it is. You're in a cancerous situation at work. Gotta let it go.
Mhm.
So anyways, that is my advice. So I'll get off that soapbox, but I'm very, connected to folks like that. And please, I know that we'll give out my contact information once we start to get done, but guys can message me, and gals. I just say guys generally.
Sure, sure. And as you're talking, I have this vision of like a mountain, like you're climbing a mountain, right? And this mountain, it's a make believe mountain, right? But it never, there's no top to the mountain. It keeps going forever. And it every so often there's like a little plateau, and but you keep climbing. So you get to that plateau, that's like that one goal, like in your case, that speech that you now have a date for. Okay, well, now you're climbing up to hit that point, and that's where you are aiming for right now. But once when you get to that, you look up and okay, well, there's another plateau up there, and there might be another speech that you have, kind of brewing in the back of your mind, and or some other thing, maybe another
Always
phase.
has to be another objective. That's right.
Exactly.
As
There's
soon as you,
always something
yeah,
else, right? And I think the purpose of that is so that we don't feel like if I didn't get to this one thing, like in your case, that you didn't finish that race. Okay, fine, you didn't finish that race. Why didn't you finish the race? Let's figure it out so you can finish the next one. Um, and then okay, now I finished it. Now I want to get better. I want to get a better time. I want to, you know, uh, figure out how to cool my body down better, or, I don't know, whatever the case may be. And so that's your next thing. That's your next plateau on the mountain. You're climbing to figure out what that next thing is. And the whole point of this is not that, oh, it's useless. I'll never get to the top of the mountain. Why am I going to bother? The point is every time you get to that next plateau, you're better than you were on the last one. And if you keep going and you keep getting to a higher and higher and higher place, um, those difficult things that were once difficult to you, they become easier. Not that they're not still difficult, but to you, you've gotten better at those things, and so it's not as much of a struggle to you, and you can now do these great things. You can finish that race that you couldn't finish before. Okay, cool. Now you can do that. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to finish it, but it's going to be easier
Right.
than it was before, right? And so all of these things get easier. I don't want to say easy, but they get easier, right? And think about it. Like, go back to when you're a kid, when maybe you didn't know how to ride a bike or something, and your mom or your dad or whoever taught you how to ride a bike, and then once when you figured that out, that became easy. You knew how to do it, and you could do that now for the rest of your life. You don't have to go back and relearn that skill. Even if you haven't been on a bike in 20 years, you can still get on it, and you know how to do it, right? um like, other things are like that too, where once when you've kind of figured things out, it just gets a little bit easier, and then you can do bigger and better things, and then you start to see this kind of snowball effect where things just get bigger and bigger and better, and it's just uh, you'll start to see your life accelerate at that point. I think,
Right.
anyways, right?
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
we're on the same page. I mean, yeah, exactly. And get up, get moving, and get outside. I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
that's another thing. Being outside is just, for whatever reason, just provides some kind of positive, psyche, um, you know. But yeah, and it's just like a video game, right? Like, we keep up leveling, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, that's another way.
and that's that's what you're doing in your life. It's like when you first get to the gym, it's like, man, I can't put 45s on the side, but give yourself a month and you're putting two of them on there,
Sure.
um, so yeah, I mean, we're just training ourselves. So
Right. Yeah, and the gym is a good example too. I mean, if you never go to the gym and you never lift weights or anything, well, of course you can't expect to lift a lot of weight, but if you go and you do it consistently, well, you're gonna get better and better and better and better, and, the weights that used to be really hard for you, you're gonna be like, "Oh, this is nothing. I can do this no problem." So that's the same thing with a lot of things in life, and so you just got to keep putting in that effort, and
right,
just don't give
consistency.
up. Yeah, consistency. That's a good one. Before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to let folks know where they can go to find you. I know you do motivational speaking and that type of thing, where they can get in touch with you to either schedule you for a talk or whatever it is that you got going on.
Yeah, richingram.com. That's it. That's the website. There's a contact section. You contact me. There's some resources and stuff there. And yeah, would love to have a conversation.
Excellent, excellent. Well, um, you know, I'll have all these links in the show notes for everyone to be able to check you out there, so that they don't have to worry about writing that down. But really, I think it's inspiring hearing your story, hearing kind of the stuff that you had going on, and how you overcame everything uh, with a positive attitude. Yeah, there's going to be days, that you talked about where it's, a little down, a little depressed, whatever. But we all have those days, and but you're not alone in that.
Right,
But
exactly.
we all have those, and but you got to shake off the dust and brush yourself off and keep moving forward. That I think that's the name of the game, and that's a name of this podcast. Drive on, like, just
Yeah,
keep
there you
moving
go.
forward. Exactly. So, Rich, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Your story, again, truly inspirational. So I'm really glad to have you here,
Thanks, Scott.
and look forward to chatting with you again in the future. Really do appreciate it. So thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to support the show, please check out Scott's book, Surviving Son, on Amazon. All of the sales from that book go directly back into this podcast and work to help veterans in need. You can also follow the Drive On podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.